Brittney Griner just broke down in tears after getting completely dominated by a player half her age, and now everyone's asking if this is the end of her career. What happened in that Indiana Fever playoff game wasn't just a loss. It was a complete changing of the guard that left Griner benched during the most critical moments, while Aliyah Boston took over everything she used to own. The veteran center who once terrorized the paint couldn't even stay on the court when it mattered most. And her emotional breakdown afterward revealed something nobody expected about her future. But here's what makes this even more shocking. The Fever pulled this off while missing 6 players, including their biggest star. Think about that for a second. Caitlin Clark was out with an ankle injury she's been dealing with since late December 2024. Sophie Cunningham couldn't suit up either. Chloe Bibby, Sydney Colson, Ari McDonald, and Damiris Dantas all watched from the sidelines in street clothes. That's basically half the rotation gone, yet somehow Indiana still sent Atlanta packing and advanced to the semifinals for the first time since 2015. If you think this story is wild already, hit that like button because what Boston did to Griner gets even crazier. The last time Indiana won a playoff series, most of today's rookies were still in middle school. Tamika Catchings was anchoring the roster, Stephanie White was coaching them to a finals appearance, and nobody had even heard of Caitlin Clark yet. Since then, Fever fans have gotten used to disappointment, early exits, rebuilding seasons, and watching other teams celebrate while they went home. But on that Friday night in Atlanta, everything changed in ways nobody saw coming. What made this victory even sweeter was how the analysts completely wrote them off. Every expert on television said there was zero chance Indiana could win without Clark's shooting or Cunningham's defensive energy. They claimed Atlanta's depth would wear down the depleted Fever roster, that the Dream would cruise to an easy victory at home. Instead, Indiana looked like the team playing at full strength, while Atlanta fell apart when it mattered most. The crowd at Gateway Center Arena started split, but by halftime, you could hear more Fever fans than Dream supporters. It literally sounded like a home game during an elimination matchup. Now, let's talk about what really shocked everyone: why Brittney Griner spent most of the fourth quarter sitting on the bench during an elimination game. This is a player who built her entire legacy on dominating playoff basketball. For over a decade, she was the one defenses feared most. The center who could change everything with one blocked shot or one unstoppable move in the paint. Teams used to game plan specifically around stopping her because if they didn't, she'd destroy them single-handedly. But against Indiana, she became a complete liability that her own coach couldn't trust when the season was on the line. The numbers tell the brutal truth about how far Griner has fallen. In Game 2, she shot 4 of 16 from the floor. That's 25% for a center who's supposed to dominate inside. In one game, she finished with just 2 points and 2 rebounds, barely even showing up in the box score. Her playoff averages across her prime years showed consistent double-doubles with elite efficiency and heavy minutes. This series, career lows across the board, capped off by getting benched when her team needed her most. Meanwhile, Aliyah Boston was putting up 14 points, 12 rebounds, and 6 assists in the clincher. Literally doing everything Griner used to do, but better. But that wasn't even the most devastating part. With 7.4 seconds left in Game 4 and the score tied, Boston got perfect position in the paint and hit the go-ahead layup that essentially ended Atlanta's season. She didn't just score, she completely dominated Griner on both ends, pushing her off her spots, forcing uncomfortable fadeaways, and making the veteran center look completely lost out there. Every time Griner tried to back Boston down, the younger player held her ground. Every time Griner went for her signature moves, Boston was there first. It wasn't just a bad matchup, it was a complete dismantling of everything that made Griner special. What happened next would shock everyone watching. After the game, Griner's emotional breakdown revealed something nobody expected about where her mind is at right now. She sat there in tears, talking about how she let everyone down, how she couldn't give herself grace even though everyone tells her to. The way she kept saying it was her fault, that she disappointed her family and teammates. This wasn't just post-game frustration. This sounded like someone questioning whether they can keep doing this at all. When a player of her caliber starts talking like that, after getting dominated by someone a decade younger, retirement conversations naturally start happening. The contrast between these two centers couldn't be more obvious. Boston represents everything the modern WNBA center needs to be: mobile, versatile, able to create for teammates while still protecting the paint. Those 6 assists she had, That's not something Griner ever added to her game. Boston can switch on defense, guard multiple positions, and still anchor the paint when needed. She's basically the evolution of what Griner used to be, upgraded for today's faster, more skilled game. And at just 23 years old, heading into 2025, Boston is only getting started while Griner looks like she's running on fumes. But here's where the story gets even more interesting. This wasn't just about one matchup. The entire Fever roster stepped up in ways that exposed how much the league is changing. Kelsey Mitchell attacked relentlessly, even without Clark to space the floor. Lexi Hull made every hustle play that mattered. Nalissa Smith controlled the boards when Boston needed help. Grace Berger ran the offense like a veteran despite being thrown into a bigger role. Every single player who touched the court contributed something crucial, proving that the new generation isn't just talented, they're deeper and more versatile than the old guard ever was. Remember when everyone said Indiana couldn't survive without Caitlin Clark? Well, they just proved that narrative completely wrong, and it might actually help them long term. Don't get me wrong, Clark is incredible, and when she's healthy again after that ankle injury clears up, this team becomes even scarier. But proving they can win a playoff series without her shows real championship DNA. The injured players were still contributing too. Clark never stopped coaching from the bench. Cunningham was basically an assistant coach, and Bibby stayed in every huddle. They had their 6th player advantage even without being on the court, which shows the culture this young team has already built. What makes Boston's dominance even more impressive is how she handled the pressure. This was her first playoff series win ever. Same for Mitchell, same for Hull, same for most of this roster actually. They're not supposed to be this composed in elimination games, especially on the road against a veteran team, but Boston played like she'd been here 100 times before, making the right read on every possession, never forcing anything, just systematically taking apart a defense that had no answer for her. That's not normal for someone in just their 2nd year. That's superstar stuff that usually takes half a decade to develop. The officiating controversy from the first 2 games could have derailed everything too. There were missed calls, questionable whistles late in the 4th quarter of Game 2, and plenty of anger from Fever fans about how things were being called. But Indiana didn't let it affect their focus in Game 3. They came out determined to win by enough that the refs couldn't decide it, and that's exactly what they did. When teams can overcome bad officiating through pure execution and will, that's when you know they're special. Comment below if you think the refs were trying to help Atlanta, or if Indiana was just that much better. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. Is this really the end for Brittney Griner as an elite player? Everything points to yes. When your coach doesn't trust you in the biggest moments, when a second-year player completely outclasses you, when you're breaking down emotionally, talking about letting everyone down, those aren't signs of someone who's going to bounce back. This feels different from a normal slump. This feels like Father Time finally caught up to someone who dominated for over a decade, but can't keep up with how the game has evolved. The league is getting younger, faster, and more skilled every year. Players like Boston aren't just athletic. They're complete basketball players who can do everything. They can shoot from outside, handle the ball, make plays for others, and still protect the rim. Griner never developed those skills because she never had to. Her size and athleticism were enough for most of her career, but now that advantage is gone, and she doesn't have the versatility to compensate. It's harsh, but it's reality. The game passed her by while she was still playing it. What happened in Atlanta wasn't just one game or one series. It was a glimpse into the WNBA's future. The old stars who relied on physical dominance are getting replaced by complete players who can do everything. The teams that adapt and get younger are thriving while the ones clinging to the past are getting exposed. Indiana represents everything that's right about this new direction. Young talent, incredible depth even when injured, and a fearless approach that doesn't care about reputation or history. This Fever team is scary good, and they're only getting started. When Clark comes back from that ankle injury, when Cunningham returns to her defensive anchor role, when all 6 injured players are healthy again, this becomes a legitimate championship contender in 2025. They've already proven they can win without their best player. Imagine what they'll do at full strength. Boston is establishing herself as the best young center in the league. Mitchell is showing she can be a #1 option when needed. The supporting cast is deeper than anyone realized. Meanwhile, teams built around aging stars like Griner better be worried. The changing of the guard isn't coming. It's already here. Boston didn't just beat Griner in one series, she showed everyone what the future looks like. And for veterans who can't adapt, who can't add new dimensions to their game, who rely on what worked 5 years ago, their time is running out faster than they think. The tears in Griner's eyes weren't just about losing one series, they were about realizing an entire era might be ending. The most telling moment came in those final minutes when Atlanta needed a basket to save their season. Who did they go to? Not their longtime franchise player, not the center who was supposed to dominate inside. They kept Griner on the bench and tried to win without her, which tells you everything about where her career stands right now. When your own team doesn't believe in you during the biggest moments, when they'd rather go small than play you, that's not just a coaching decision. That's a career obituary being written in real time. This is why Indiana's victory means so much more than just advancing to the semifinals. They didn't just beat Atlanta, they showed the entire league that the power structure is shifting. The teams investing in young talent are rising, while the ones holding on to the past are falling behind. Boston versus Griner was the perfect symbol of this transition. One player ascending to superstardom, while the other fades into irrelevance. One representing the future, while the other clings to the past. One celebrating a breakthrough, while the other contemplates retirement. So what happens next? For Indiana, the sky's the limit once they get healthy. For Griner, the questions will only get louder. Can she reinvent herself at this stage of her career? Does she have another season left in her? Or was this series the beginning of the end? Based on what we saw in Atlanta, based on those emotional post-game comments, based on getting benched when it mattered most, this feels like we're watching the final chapter of a Hall of Fame career that simply couldn't adapt to the modern game. The Fever are heading to the semifinals, and they're doing it as the team nobody wants to face. They've proven they can win without their stars, they've shown incredible mental toughness, and they have a young core that's only getting better. Boston is 23, Clark is 22 when she returns. Mitchell is entering her prime. This isn't just a feel-good story about overcoming injuries. This is the beginning of a potential dynasty that could dominate the league for the next decade. And it all started with Aliyah Boston completely destroying the player who used to own the paint, sending a message to every veteran in the league that their time might be up sooner than they think. Make sure you're subscribed to catch what happens next, because this story is far from over.